Welcome to the deep dive. If you're out there in the job market right now, or you've been through that application grinder anytime in the last 10 years, you know it's tough. But our sources today are suggesting that the challenge isn't just that you're fighting for a spot, it's that the fight itself has fundamentally changed.
We're looking at a whole stack of research that puts forward this really powerful idea that the whole job application process has shifted away from a traditional human competition. And it's moved to a completely mechanical filtration system where the antagonist isn't a person anymore, it's a piece of software.
And the central analogy here, the one we're really going to be grappling with today, it describes this as a shift from the Hunger Games era of hiring to the Terminator era, which is, I mean, a pretty vivid way to think about how the rules of engagement have just changed right under our feet.
It really is.
Yes.
And our mission here is to unpack these sources to really understand this quiet revolution.
Yeah.
We're not just looking at what tools were adopted, like applicant tracking system.
Yes.
We need to understand why the actual objectives of the entire system just quietly shifted. What does this transformation mean for you, the person navigating this new automated landscape?
Before we jump into all the mechanics, let's just set that baseline. I think it's important. The sources remind us that the candidate journey, it used to be, and I'm quoting here, brutal, but it was at least recognizable.
Right.
It was competitive, often really unfair, based on who you knew or how you presented yourself.
But it was fundamentally human.
Exactly.
And that humanness, that's the key to understanding what's been lost. It means that while the process was flawed, really flawed, it was run by minds. And minds can be changed.
Okay, so let's unpack that first phase. The Hunger Games era, we had high volume for sure, huge numbers of applicants all getting funneled into one process. But the core dynamic was that you, the candidate, were competing against other candidates for the judgment of other humans.
Precisely. The structure was always a funnel. Attention was scarce, it was unevenly distributed, but the success factors were tangible, even if they were rooted in bias. Things like your pedigree, how confidently you spoke, your presentation skills.
And just the weird specific biases of whatever hiring manager you got that day.
Exactly. And the power structure was incredibly clear.
Right. The employer was the capital.
Yep. Recruiters were the intermediaries, the arbiters, kind of shuffling people through the process. And the hiring managers. They were the visible, final judges making the call.
But what's crucial here, you're saying, is the sense of agency that actually existed in that system, which feels a little counterintuitive because the odds were stacked against most people.
They were.
Yeah.
But because the decision was ultimately made by a person, the candidate still had some degree of influence. Well, you could try. You could adjust your pitch, you could pivot, you could simply try to persuade them face to face. A recruiter, acting as that human broker, could go advocate for you.
Okay, I see.
A decision, no matter how arbitrary it seemed, could be questioned or challenged. The rules were cruel, no doubt, but they were administered by a visible person with a mind that, in theory, could be changed by a human connection.
That's the agency.
That's the agency that was lost. That human-centric system, it just hit an absolute breaking point.
And the sources are really clear that the catalyst wasn't some complex new technology. It was just raw, unmanageable volume.
That's the key takeaway. Digital job boards, they lowered the cost of applying to basically zero.
Oh.
You could send out 100 applications in the time it used to take to write one single cover letter. Global mobility increased, economic shocks drove these massive, unpredictable spikes in applicants.
What was once just a heavy administrative lift suddenly became a tidal wave.
A tidal wave of data. Facing that chaos, hundreds, maybe thousands of applications for one-role organizations started reaching for tools that promised some kind of relief.
And that's the applicant tracking systems, the ATS.
Absolutely. And initially, the pitch for the ATS and other automation tools was completely positive. It was about order, reducing admin burden, introducing some objectivity.
Right. And later on, AI was pitched as something that would augment human judgment.
Help humans focus only on that critical 5% of candidates.
Okay, wait, but that all sounds pretty benevolent. So why are the sources suggesting the intent quietly changed? I mean, surely they were just trying to reduce friction and bias. Are the sources saying that was just a side effect and the real goal was gatekeeping?
Not malicious gatekeeping, but organizational preservation. The source material really stresses that the intent behind the tools quietly changed the moment the volume became truly unbearable. The human cost of just reviewing 500 bad applications drove this new organizational mandate. Relief.
Relief from what?
Relief from the humans, The process stopped being about helping humans make better decisions,
Right.
and it started being about protecting the system from the humans.
Wow.
That enormous volume of applications was suddenly seen as the primary threat, the noise that the system needed protection from.
Which means the entire candidate journey it fundamentally shifts right there.
Right.
We move from competition candidate versus candidate, fighting for a manager's attention, to pure filtration, candidate versus the machine.
And this is exactly where that analogy lands. The sources are so clear on this. This is where the Hunger Games gives way to Terminator. The objective is no longer to be judged. The objective is to survive the filtering sequence.
You're competing to be, and this is a really powerful phrase, legible to software. What does that actually mean on the ground?
Think of it less like writing a persuasive letter to a person, and more like optimizing a complex tax form for a scanner.
Okay.
If you don't use the exact boxes the machine expects, if you don't structure your data in the precise way the parser demands, you just don't register. You're not judged as bad, you simply become invisible.
The visible antagonist, that biased hiring manager, is gone, but the adversary is now the system itself.
And because the inner workings of the ATS are so opaque, this just created a parallel mythology almost overnight. Candidates, unable to see the judge, started exchanging these folktales about the ATS. Stories took hold about secret keyword thresholds, hidden formatting rules.
Or that the system automatically rejects you if you use a PDF instead of a Word doc, or the wrong font. I remember using white font to just stuff keywords into my resume, just hoping to trick whatever scanner was on the other end.
And that desperate hacking the system response, it created an entire cottage industry. Resume writers, career influencers, all promising to unlock the algorithm.
Right.
And here's a really painful insight from the sources. Recruiters often did very little to dispel these myths. The machine became a very convenient shield.
Yeah.
Any responsibility for the silence, for the automated rejection, could just be outsourced to the scale of the system.
So if recruiters are no longer those human intermediaries, what does their role even look like now?
Their role shifts profoundly. It moves from stewardship and judgment to what the sources call system maintenance. They're managing queues, they're tuning the workflow, making sure the ATS is running smoothly. They're basically data administrators.
So they're not making decisions, they're just keeping the conveyor belt moving.
Exactly. And the metrics they're measured on, they shift away from meaning like candidate fit or long-term retention, and they move toward movement.
Movement.
Speed, throughput, and, this is crucial, source attribution.
Why does that matter so much in this new era?
It matters because it's the metric that dictates worth. Source attribution proves the ROI of the software or the recruiter's own network. If the system costs $1 million, the organization needs to prove it's generating successful hires from that system.
Okay, so
Therefore, candidates sourced directly by a recruiter or through a referral or by some newly purchased AI tool, they come pre-framed as being higher quality. They just fit the reporting model better.
that's the implication then, that the path by which a candidate is discovered becomes a proxy for their worth. So if I apply cold through the machine's front door, I'm inherently seen as less valuable than someone who came in the side door with a referral.
Which is completely counterintuitive, right? It means the effort you put into the official, front-facing application is often self-defeating in the system's eyes.
Because it just creates more noise.
It creates unnecessary volume that the system is literally designed to reject.
Now, we have to bring this back to the listener's perspective because this system creates a truly bleak and, dehumanizing experience.
It's awful.
You're asked to follow instructions in good faith, completing these forms that just demand repetition. I remember spending 15 minutes typing in the exact same job descriptions and dates that were clearly on the PDF I had just uploaded. That's not just repetition, it's almost repetition as punishment, isn't it?
It's repetition as proof of commitment, or, as the sources put it, it's functioning as attrition. Those screening questions aren't designed to gather nuanced data.
No.
They're designed to exhaust and weed people out. The logic is, if you're willing to re-enter all that data, you must be serious.
And then you move on to the actual assessments.
Yes, the timed, high-pressure assessments calibrated to reward speed over critical thought. Or the personality tests that allow zero room for context or contradiction, or the idea that people can grow and change.
You're forced to perform this idealized, static version of yourself. And then I think this is the final indignity, having to perform enthusiasm for a non-human audience.
Talking to Jane. The AI recruiter.
Yes, you might spend a half hour talking into your webcam answering questions for AI recruiter Jane, trying to demonstrate your cultural alignment and commitment to a system that can't actually be impressed or persuaded. It only scores you.
And then so often comes the silence. Because in this era, rejection is completely abstracted. You're never formally declined. You're deprioritized. You're never unsuccessful. You're just never surfaced for human review. The logic behind why you failed, it's all hidden behind models that few people, even inside the company, can fully explain.
And then the absolute final moment of insult. That automated email weeks or months later.
Oh, that email.
Informing you that you were unsuccessful after careful consideration. A consideration that, as we now know, never actually occurred.
And that's where we have to differentiate between just standard corporate indifference and what the sources call structural neglect. No single individual person woke up that morning and decided to ignore your application or send that fake email. That's why it's not indifference.
So what is structural neglect?
It's the core problem. The system was never designed to notice complexity or outliers or human connection or even just basic politeness.
Right.
It was designed to optimize for efficiency, speed, and risk reduction. And any candidate who doesn't fit that narrow metric is just dropped without any human intervention. The system optimized for itself, and you were simply overlooked by design.
So the true danger here isn't that the machines are malevolent. It's that the goals we set for the machine in the first place were totally unexamined.
That is the heart of the research. The systems are doing exactly what they were told to do, optimize for efficiency and throughput. But in doing so, they are quietly eroding trust, dignity, and understanding.
And then organizations act surprised when candidates drop off, or they rely only on their personal networks, or they just ignore the official application portal altogether.
Exactly. They frame that high drop-off rate as a candidate motivation problem. Oh, they just weren't serious enough, rather than recognizing it as a profound design failure.
When you realize the arena is rigged to filter you out before a human can even see you, it's completely understandable that you'd refuse to submit to a process you don't trust anymore. If this is a design failure and it stems from these unexamined objectives, the solution has to be to restore some clarity, some human intent to the whole system. This transformation isn't inevitable, right? It's fixable.
Absolutely. The source material is actually quite hopeful on this front. The same technology that filters applications can also be used to explain and communicate to the candidate. The same automation that rejects a form can easily be tweaked to communicate why the candidate was deprioritized. And crucially, the same AI that scores a candidate can be used to support human judgment rather than completely replacing it.
But that requires a massive internal shift in thinking, a willingness to prioritize something other than pure throughput.
It requires clarity of intent and a willingness to, and I'm quoting again, design for humans, not just for scale. We had to move past this obsession with making the process bigger and faster and start focusing on making it fair and transparent.
And that means restoring the recruiter's proper role in all this, doesn't it?
They must be restored as accountable stewards of the journey, not just attendants for the machine. They should be using the systems to remove the unnecessary noise, that massive volume, but never to abdicate responsibility for the outcome.
Which means changing their incentives.
It means aligning incentives so that fairness, responsiveness, and the quality of the match are what's measured and rewarded, not just the speed of filling a position or that source attribution metric. We need systems that enable human connection, not shield humans from it.
That brings us to the end of our deep dive into this quiet, systemic transformation of the labor market, and the central power shift seems really clear. In the Hunger Games era, power was visible, it was human, and it was concentrated in the hands of a few judges.
And now in the Terminator era, that power is hidden, it's systemic, and it's diffused across all these algorithms and workflows. We have quietly automated away the human capacity for persuasion, for advocacy, and for judgment.
So as you're navigating this new landscape, what does this all really mean for you?
It leads to the final, I think, provocative question that's raised by our sources. Recruitment is still, at its core, a human act. It's the matching of one person's potential to an organization's need. The question is whether we are designing systems that remember that core truth, or whether accountability is just quietly being automated away. If we keep going down this path, ever smarter systems will be built to manage a process that nobody fully understands. And the moment that candidates inevitably refuse to submit to a system they no longer trust, the blame will be quietly redirected back at them for their lack of motivation, rather than directed at the systems we designed for neglect. We have to decide if we want systems that serve our true purpose, finding great people, or if we just want systems that reduce our administrative burden.